Hello everybody, Zach here, brand manager on Elite Dangerous here at Frontier, and I'm joined by two special dev guests today to talk about everyone's favourite space game, Elite Dangerous. So would you like to introduce yourself, starting with Curtis?
Hi, I'm Curtis. I'm one of the designers on the game.
Chris?
I'm Chris, and I'm the art director on the game.
Lovely. So I think everybody knows what we're here to talk about today. We said at the end of the last show that we would talk about the Panther Clipper MK II, which is what we're here to talk about. Chris very kindly, I believe 2 months ago now.
2 whole months since
Yes.
PitCon, and we revealed that the Panther was coming.
Yeah, very nicely with the teaser image that you kindly put together at PitCon. And then, yes, we went into Unlocked, where you talked about the concepts and the sort of design ethos, I guess, like what you were thinking for the initial concept of the ship.
Very much so, and so those concept images, obviously we had those complete at the time, and we've spent the last 2 months actually trying to get that into game and fulfill on those concept images, and I think we've done a pretty good job of it, as you'll see later.
Yes, I mean, this is one of the, if not the largest ship we've ever put into Elite Dangerous, at least from a player control point of view, right? And so that does actually translate to the work and effort that it is needed from your team.
Definitely, it's certainly a challenging ship to implement and to make good on all those things that we wanted to sell, the scale and the size of this ship, and we'll talk about some of that as we go through and see some of the images.
Sweet. All right. Well, talking of images, I think without further ado, while we go through our sort of discussion points for you guys, let's show the Panther Clipper MK II in the game for the very first time. So enjoy this chat as we go through. So I think to kick off, to bring everyone back up to speed, Curtis, what sort of ship is the Panther Clipper MK II? For someone that's never maybe tuning in for the very first time to an Elite stream, maybe they've just picked up the game, what is the Panther Clipper MK II?
Big trader.
It's a big trader, yes, it's exactly that.
Some might say the biggest trader.
The biggest trader?
And they would be correct.
Okay, well, we'll dive into the exact details of why that is the case later on. But Chris, I think it's fair to say this thing is going to be pretty good for those players that want to get from A to B.
I think definitely if you have some goods that you want to move around the galaxy at speed,
yes,
this is the ship for you. So perfect if you are looking to supply goods to build a new station for colonization, for instance, and loads of other things where you've got to shift tonnage from one point in space to another.
Yeah. So I think, Curtis, knowing, when we released colonization, we saw all those cries for, we really want to trade all these materials. How hard was it knowing behind the scenes that you were working on this the whole time? You just wanted to tell everybody this is what it was.
It was so hard seeing all of the posts that were like, oh, if I just had, a couple of hundred more tons of haulage, I'd be good. And just being like, can't say anything.
Well, we're nearly there.
We are nearly there, yes.
So, okay, on trading then, how does the Panther Clipper MK II compare to the other traders in the game right now?
So roughly speaking, it's got about 50% more capacity than our biggest traders. So quite the improvement compared to what players are used to. It's got a similar jump range when fully laden to those traders as well. So even though it's hauling a lot more, it's keeping up with the speed that you'd expect from like a Type 9 or something.
Yeah.
And it's also, compared to our dedicated traders, got a little bit more bite to it. You're carrying a lot of goods, so we wanted to make sure that you had something there to defend yourself.
Interesting. We'll touch on that a bit later on.
I'm sure we will.
And Chris, what do you think from a visual point of view? What was the process when you had to set this ship aside, I guess, from some of the other traders in the game?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of large trading ships, and in the game they have been for a while, and I think one of the things that they all share, which we have also implemented with the Panther, is form follows function. So they are large, they are bulky, they don't waste space. And so that tends to have the consequence that they have a slightly boxy appearance. Some of our other ships, though, were boxy and also quite angular and quite brutalist, and that was by intention. So with this one of the bits of thinking that we had was similar to the Mandalay, where we took an explorer ship, but we wanted to go for something that had a few more curves in there and a slightly more appealing look. Same lens really was used on the Panther, so that's why we went for Zorg and Peterson as a manufacturer.
Yeah.
So we could have a few more elegant lines and bits of design in there, while still maintaining that big, bulky look.
Yeah.
It's just that little bit more refined in its detailing, and we think it's unique for that reason.
Yeah, and I think everyone watching right now, seeing the footage, will quite clearly be able to see that silhouette of the original Panther Clipper, right? But with, like you said, those enhancements that we've seen across all of the new ships that we've added to the game, right? But this one in particular, you can really see that the callback to the original.
I think hopefully it will map onto that and remind people who remember that ship, whilst also providing a unique and exciting new ship for those who maybe haven't played the older games.
100%. All right then. So, what is, Curtis? What would you say the USP of the ship is? I think with a lot of these new ships we're adding, we like to try and, we have a USP for each of them. What would you really say? You're speaking directly to the players right now. What is that USP of the ship?
So, there is the obvious one. It's got loads more cargo capacity. But our best traders always have the most cargo. So I'd say that probably with the Panther, the thing I like most about it anyway is I don't have to sacrifice on some of the sort of like more comfort modules that I'd like to take when trading.
Okay.
If I'm trading at the moment, I might go around in a stripped down Type 9 that has no shields and no booster and nothing, and sort of get as much cargo as I can out of it. Whereas in the Panther, if I want 1,000 tons of cargo and still want a shield and a couple of other modules, I can do it.
Okay, I mean that makes it a pretty exciting prospect just by itself, right? Chris, I mean from a visual point of view, is there anything on the ship itself? I mean, you guys are probably seeing it on the videos right now that you think sets it apart as in a sort of USP? Is it those thrusters on the side maybe, or something
There's
else?
a couple of things. Yeah, we always try to give each ship something unique, and in this case, it's definitely the rotating and pivoting engine pods, the 4 pods, that also, in this ship's case, serve as the ship's landing gear as well when it's come to rest. And that was a callback, as we discussed last time, to the way the original ship worked in the original Elite, and so we wanted to preserve that. And the team have done a really nice job of engineering that animation so that it feels nice and chunky and heavy on the side of the ship. And so, yeah, I think that's probably one of the most unique things. And then in terms of challenges, in terms of making this ship unique from a construction point of view, I think we hadn't quite realised until we got it in game that you, foolishly on our part, would be walking under this thing, on top of this thing. And that's a lot of real estate that we had to make sure held up from all of those angles. So we actually ended up taking the concepts, and we were finding there were places where we needed to add a little bit more detail on top of that, and doing that in a targeted way so that it didn't feel too cluttered, and it worked from a distance and it also worked close up. That was quite a challenge, but it was fun.
Yeah, so I mean, chat, when you eventually get your hands on the Panther Clipper Mark II, make sure you get out and look around underneath, because Chris and the team spent a lot of time making sure that
find the one spot we forgot to detail.
Yeah, put that in the issue tracker and then we'll have a look. All right then, so let's move on to the stuff that some of our players really like to know about, Curtis. I know you have dreams or nightmares about these moments where we talk about hard points and things like that. So let's
statistics, here we go.
Here we go. Let's start with the hard points, Curtis. How many does the ship have?
So it does have 10.
Okay.
Which, if I'm remembering correctly, is the most of any ship in the game.
Okay.
And as for the configuration, you've got 4 small, 4 medium, and 2 large.
Right.
So a fair amount of firepower. You're not matching a Corvette or an Anaconda, but the Type 9 is sort of kind of blown out the water a bit by that.
Okay. And sorry, go on.
No, please.
Is there anything you envision a player to put on those hard points in particular, or is it quite open to interpretation?
Well, you can put whatever you want on it. I might stay away from fixed weapons because it is a big ship, so it does have quite the wide turning circle. So I imagine most players put turrets on, but you could fit it with pretty much whatever you want, and it'll do some damage.
Yeah, Chris, how was it finding the spots for those hard points on this one? Was it easy? Was it hard?
Surprisingly,
a lot of space.
A little bit easier on this one, partly due to those factors. The fact that it's encouraged to use turrets, for instance, helps it a little bit, but definitely we wanted to make sure that there were centerline weapons as well. and to do all the tests that we do usually to get those hard points in really early in the process, and then Curtis and his team will test that out and make sure that they feed back to us on what's working and what isn't working.
Yeah.
So a little bit easier just in terms of the fact that there's more space, so you're not having to fit them into thin wings or anything like that. The bulk of it definitely helped, but it was the usual process and back and forth to refine where they actually ended up.
Perfect. All right then. So let's move on to optional internals.
Yep. So for this one, we've got one size 1, one size 2, size 4, for your booster or whatever.
Yep.
2 size 5s, 3 size 6, 2 size 7, and 2 size 8.
Nice. Okay.
There's something special about those ones, but
we'll talk about those. Yes, you may have picked up on that chat. We'll talk about those just in a second. But first, let's just go over the core internals as well.
Yep. So again, it's a big ship, so it needs a lot of power, and it needs a basically big everything.
Yes.
So size 8 power plant, same for thrusters. Size 7 FSD. Life support and sensors are only a size 5 because it's traded, doesn't really need them as much. And then power distributor and fuel tank are also a size 7. So overall, a pretty beefy ship.
Yes, and I think that makes sense for the size of this one.
Yeah, and that also explains why it weighs so much.
Yes. All right, so the Panther Clipper Mark II, as you just sort of hinted at, is actually the first ship we've made in Elite Dangerous to introduce a new module slot recently. So can you tell us a bit more about that? Yeah,
so players that fly ships with the military slots will be somewhat familiar with what we've done here. And what the Panther has is it has 2 slots that are specifically designed to only take specific modules, kind of like the military slots. But in this case, instead of it being military gear, it is basically storage modules. So specifically, this will be cargo racks and fuel tanks. But along with this, and this is the bit that's more unique to this slot than to stuff like the military slot, is there are specific modules that will only fit in these slots. So only the Panther can have them.
Right.
And that is specifically a size 8 and a size 7 on the Panther. And there are 2 new modules, size 7 and 8, of a optimized cargo rack that has an increased capacity. So you can fit even more cargo on the ship.
Okay, are you willing to give us any numbers in terms of cargo?
So it's a 50% increase.
Yeah.
So you folks, I'm going to do the math. But it's a 50% increase on the size 7 and the size 8 standard cargo.
So it's going to transfer a lot, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, so a new unique module is something that, we're excited to keep advancing with these ships and seeing what we can do with them. And this is, us again testing those waters and seeing, as you look at all the sort of plethora of elite dangerous ships we have right now, and you're trying to pick out spaces where there is, opportunity to advance a certain area, right? And this kind of thing will help us do that, right?
Exactly. It gives us a lot more tools, or a lot of like different arrows in our quiver to make ships unique going forward, so that we can really make sure that we're not just like producing the same ship but with a slightly different skin. Yeah.
So I think on that, I guess, just to wrap all this up into one main question about trade, I think to summarize, Curtis, what makes this ship so good at trade? It is that capacity, right, as well as some other bits.
It all comes down to how much it can carry and what you can do with the ship while carrying that amount. And it's well armed, it's well equipped, and it can haul as much as you want.
Perfect. All right. So obviously, as you mentioned earlier, this is a trade ship. Quite a lot of the time, if you are trading, you're probably going to come across some not so polite commanders who maybe want to destroy your ship. So how does the Panther Clipper fare in combat at the minute?
So as I'm sure people are guessing and looking at with the additional hard points and everything, it fares fairly well. Again, it's probably not gonna take out many pirates, especially not the ones that are coming properly well equipped, but I would be worried I would not casually go up to a Panther Clipper and start fighting it. I would prepare for that assault.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of the point. It's a trader, it's not a combat vessel, but because of how much it's trading, it needs to be able to defend itself, and that's what we've tried to provide here.
Perfect. All right then. So as always, we tell our commanders this is a trade ship, this is a combat ship, and then you guys will go away and do something completely different with it. So we thought we'd give you just a tiny bit of a head start. Curtis, is there anything any other use cases for the ship that you can think of off the top of your head?
So I fully expect to see this thing exploring, even though it's not supposed to.
Yeah, of course.
And I expect it to dominate conflict zones, even though it's never done that in testing. But I think the thing I would expect players to find quite useful about it is, while it's going to be a bit awkward to maneuver and fit in for doing stuff like core mining, just by virtue of the fact that it's got a lot of hard points, a lot of power, and a lot of space, I could see this being a really good laser miner for players.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll know within a few weeks of release exactly what else the Panther Clipper's great at, which is good. All right, so another thing in the Panther Clipper Mark II is the new bridge. I think you alluded to it last time you were on the show. Just tell us a bit, I guess, Chris, first from your point of view, what was the visual sort of process and how did you think about that as you were going about creating it?
Yeah, so it's a big ship and it needed a big bridge, basically. So we felt that it was worth making something bespoke for this one. And we really wanted to evoke the look of the older ship where there's a strip of windows. And so we wanted that long kind of feel and that view out of the front. So we paid a lot of attention to where the seating was going to be placed on the ship. So we've got the main pilot's position in the center at the front, and then we've got the three other crew arrayed at the back, and there's some nice views that can be taken of the crew and nice compositions that, if you're so minded, we'll give you some good screenshots there as well. And from a visual point of view, we kind of wanted to just make it fit with the outside. So it's chunky and industrial, but not too chunky and industrial. There's a little bit of finesse to the way it's put together. But yeah, and those 4 seats, I think, will hopefully come in useful when the crew have to defend themselves.
Yeah, Curtis, do you want to expand a bit on that?
Yeah, so as you say, there's 4 seats if you include the pilot. So you've got 1 seat for the pilot, 1 seat for the gunner on all of those turrets. And this will also be our first, in the line of new ships at least, ship with a fighter bay, which means you can have 2 of your fellow crew members in fighters helping you fend off those nasty pirates after all of your glorious cargo.
Lovely. So there is basically plenty of, things to do for everyone on board.
Yep.
All right. So one of the last things we like to talk about every time when we talk about these new ships is the cosmetics and some of the ways that you can make the ship your own. So as always, we've got the standard version of the ship. And Chris, we've also got the Stellar version this time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the fun parts of designing the ships was once we're done with the main concepting, there's then a process where we then start to add bits for the ship kits and design all the different paint jobs and liveries for that. So in this case, obviously there'll be a range to come over time, but day one you'll be able to choose between the standard version and then the Stellar version, which comes with a nice black and gold livery, which we think looks rather smart.
Yep.
And also a set of kit pieces, 6 I think, which you can then configure to change the shape of your hull to make the ship look the way you want it to look. And that's always a fun part of seeing which bits people choose and the different configurations that people can come up with and the different combos with the different paint jobs. So yeah, looking forward to seeing people play with that.
Very nice. And we are also working on a Owners Club decal as well, which is going to be available for commanders, and we'll give you some more information on that at a later date. One thing I did want to touch on the, I think it's on the Stellar edition, correct me if I'm wrong, it might be on the base, the sort of, I don't know how to describe it, there is a part on the front of the ship that is very reminiscent of the original Panther Clipper, right, that has made its way.
I think the word you're looking for is prong.
Prong, okay.
So yeah, we, as we've discussed, we were trying to harken back to the original design as much as possible. And the original design does have a prong that's asymmetrical. It's on one side of the ship. And we toyed with the idea of including that on the base.
Yeah.
And I do like what it does to the ship, and it does add that little extra callback to the original one, but we decided to have that as an optional element, so you can choose whether or not you want to have that or any of the other kit pieces on your ship.
Perfect, makes sense. So obviously the Panther Clipper Mark II is a legendary ship. It's something that you guys have wanted for a long time, and I'm happy to say that it's going to be coming into Elite Dangerous in ARX Early Access on the 22nd of July, and you actually won't have to wait too much longer for the Vanguard's update, which will be arriving in early August.